Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again. I want to give you a recap of my first couple of days in the Metamorph League and my explosive arrow Deadeye starter. So to begin with, I did dress up as Tane Octavius and obviously, and then made a bit of a tower similar to the Metamorph tower where I'm putting in organs and it's a bunch of lunchboxes highlighted with some little flashlights, and then lo and behold, I turn into the Majestic, all of my cosplays from previous leagues at once, and of course it's not complete without a bunch of black oil, slime, whatever it is, poured all over myself, leaving me looking a little worse for wear and confused as to how I'm supposed to proceed with this sort of monstrosity. So I did have to go take a shower and then, play on as Robin Hood. In any case, this is the Explosive Arrow Deadeye starter that I put in my starter build video, and I've been following it almost exactly as I predicted it. It is using just a pretty fast bow with some crit multi-scaling, using GMP at this point because I was using Greater Volley for a very long time, and it turns out it's kinda bugged. If you're using Greater Volley, a lot of your projectiles, especially on single target, are just going to plain miss, even though they shouldn't, even if you have a 100% chance to hit. So this is with greater multiple projectiles, no pierce, no chain, because if you have any pierce or chain, then your explosive arrows will not be leaving fuses on the targets that they're piercing or chaining through. So you don't really want any of that. You want your arrows to be able to stick, and at this point of the character, I do have a 5-link, and my arrows are exploding rather quickly because I'm using lesser duration support. I think that's going to be pretty good for mapping and worth doing because it just means that your fuses will explode that much quicker and you can move from pack to pack just a little bit nicer. I have also supplemented the build with ballistas doing the exact same thing, so they've also got explosive arrow attached to them, but it's currently only a 4-link. And it does good enough, but it's not the main draw of the build, even though I have spec'd a little bit into ballistas. And I was using a 4-link up until about level 80, so it was a real crap budget sort of setup and build for almost the entire 2 days that I've been playing. I then went out and bought a new little incursion chest with life, which I'll show you, and managed to 5-link it. Now, this is a Ziri run, and just about everything has been beefed up everywhere, if you're wondering. So your characters, your builds might feel a little bit shit compared to what they used to feel like, and it's pretty natural. Things like Ziri got handily buffed. I think it's quite a bit tougher. Most bosses have quite a bit more life, and most endgame mapping stuff has more resists, more life. So overall, things will feel a bit tougher, and something like Ziri has been quite a challenge because it honestly feels like 2 to 3 times more life than before, and it means you have to play around some mechanics. That said, I honestly don't have much of a clue because I am playing Explosive Arrow, which is an entirely new sort of scaling and still trying to figure a bit of it out. Though, while mapping, my damage seems to be pretty damn good, and overall I'm killing things rather quickly at this point, and I'm not at all sad about my progression. But if things keep scaling the way they are with boss health, it's gonna be awfully hard to get into the high tiers off of fairly little currency, I think, as an explosive arrow starter, or as maybe even just a bow starter in general. Feels like you might end up needing quite a bit of progression and gear scaling to get to the later stages with these bow characters. For now though, up until level 82, something like that, and doing up till my tier 5 maps, I haven't really had any problems. It was a bit slow going at times, and it was a bit tricky to figure out, especially figuring out pierce, chain, and GMP versus volley, all of that. But overall, my explosive arrow seems to have been an okay start, at least for me, and I have been doing all my metamorphs, as many as I can. Some were really tough, really long fights. At this stage, you can see that I do shred the metamorphs pretty efficiently, and it shouldn't be much of a challenge at this tier anyway, but we'll see how it progresses into later stages. Also did run a blighted map, and that was a pretty cruisy experience. But so far, through all of my escapades, I've only had one blighted map drop. That said, it did drop a lot of loot, and they are pretty damn worth running. Got an Exalted Orb from it as well. And it's kind of difficult to know whether I should be single target for this or using my area. And for area, it's GMP, or Greater Multiple Projectiles. For single target, we swap in Barrage. And then before I get into my character, I did also try out Galvanic Arrow with Barrage, Volley, GMP, and this is kind of the bullshit that it looks like at this point. So it does scale off of projectile speed to give you further projectile area, and it's really nice with Barrage, it seems. It's a bit of a clusterfuck, and it's something to maybe look into because, well, it looks kind of cool and pretty funky. So that's Galvanic Arrow with Barrage. So there's our dude, currently level 83, called This Could Have Been a Glad. I was really tossing up between the Puncture and the Explosive Arrow in the end, but we did pull the trigger on the Explosive Arrow. The gear at this point is a little bit fine-tuned. I did buy a few little bits and pieces. Overall, we're still like under an Exalt's worth of budget so far, and it's working out well enough. I'm currently using a Rat's Nest as opposed to a Star Conjure because I don't think I really need any more life for the content I'm doing, so I'd rather just run around a bit faster. And I just grabbed a bow that has some little bit of attack speed, a little bit of crit, some fire damage, but I never actually found a Quill Rain, and I'm not so sure Quill Rain will be the way forward at this point. It probably reduces your damage too much. It's just a good starting leveling sort of item. And ideally, we're looking at probably a bow something like this, with plus Socket of Gems, maybe +2 in the end, +2 bow skills as well, maybe a bit of fire damage, maybe some fire pen, but it's just basically scaling off of the gem level and then attack speed and crit, like many flat LE type things are, because our Explosive Arrow just does 420 to 630. In the end, it's going to do quite a bit more, and then that's the entirety of the damage from the skill. We don't really have any added damage anywhere else, so we're scaling off of that, and it still definitely works to have crit and crit multi overall as a actual form of damage scaling. So it definitely works much more like a traditional bow skill now, and it's how I think you should scale it. Or conversely, you could look into scaling the Ignite by getting lots of damage over time, burn damage, and then using the final explosion with lots of attack speed to try and get an Ignite going on the target, but that's not how I've chosen to build, so I'm not sure how that's actually going to go. And at this point, like I said, using a 5-link, but I was on a 4-link up until like, let's see, if we hit up a played 19 hours, probably about 18 hours in, I was on 2 4-links, and look, it kind of sucked, but it totally still worked. And my 4-link at that time was Explosive Arrow with Greater Multiple Projectiles, Mirage Archer, and Elemental Damage with Attacks. At this stage of the character, I've taken Mirage Archer out, and I'm only doing my own attacks, entirely just shooting, exploding, and moving on. And then I've also got less duration for that purpose, and combustion to actually ignite and have some minus fire res on the enemies as well. And at this point, we probably have a little bit of scaling to actually do some ignite damage with our Explosive Arrow, but I don't think it's going to be that significant in any case. So the bow's pretty straightforward. The gear, just try and get life and resists, a little bit of elemental damage with attacks if you can. Crit multi on a quiver is really good. Crit multi on your amulet is really good. Attack speed in things like gloves, elemental damage with attacks, still some crappy resist boots. And then the 4-link for my totem is currently LE damage with attacks, fire penetration, explosive arrow, and ballista totem. And I do have 5 of these guys, and they get put down pretty damn quickly, and a lot of the time it's hard to tell if they're doing anything, but if you go out there and just let them attack, you'll notice that they can clean up by themselves, and they are a decent little boost, especially since we have spec'd into a few nodes like this one over here and this one over here. So it seems to be working out as a nice little addition so far, and I have followed the passive tree that I had linked to begin with the only differences being I've taken 1 point for mana leech over here, which kind of helped early on. At this point, I think I can drop it entirely. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do that because I am sustaining entirely off of the mana flask, which is an enduring mana flask. Make sure you roll one with flask effect is not removed at full mana. Use it as much as you can, as much as you want, and it will sustain your mana for the entirety of the character. And the only other difference is I also picked up King of the Hill because I forgot about it in the initial passive tree. That said, it does have knockback with crit, and sometimes that can be really annoying. So you might want to not take it, but for now I have taken it. And at this stage, I'm now traveling towards my life node over here because I will eventually need it for more endgame. That means I might drop something like this over here and just spec a dexterity node because it's going to take too many points otherwise, but I'll look into it as I get there. So for now, that's the character. I'm running Herald of Ash, Precision, and Skitterbots. Skitterbots shock everything. Got a Diamond Flask, a Silver Flask, Mana Flask. Maybe going to grab a different flask somewhere else as well. Not yet sure. And then I've also got Dash, Blink Arrow, Ice Golem, Assassin Mark. I'm just manually cursing at the moment on things. I'm manually hitting with Ensnaring Arrow. Might do a curse on hit there instead. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There's not much else to really say at the moment. Haven't really figured too much else out, but it's carrying me through these early levels and early mapping, and it seems to be just fine. Found a few of the actual end little content things. Supposed to start running maps here to get some actual watchstones, and it's been carrying pretty well. Yeah. My last ascendancy, or my first ascendancy was Gathering Winds. I then went Far Shot and Endless Munitions. Probably going to get Fast and Deadly, though Rupture is kind of tempting since we do still deal some physical damage and should actually have a chance of bleeding things. I think I still want Fast and Deadly for the attack speed and also the actual Blink Arrow cooldown, which would be quite nice to reduce down to half its current cooldown. And then you may notice that we're wearing new microtransactions. This is from the new mystery boxes. This is basically the full combined set. So that's what you're dealing with, and that's what you're looking at if you want to throw a few dollars to the mystery boxes. They're not particularly worth it, as always. They are mystery boxes. The first few bucks will get you some decent outcomes. Then you start to get doubles, triples, and it might feel kind of bad. But overall, I do think the set looks pretty cool. Besides that, we've got our POB, and you can see we deal some amount of damage, and maybe that's good. Who the fuck knows? Overall, I'm just saying my Explosive Arrow starter has seemed to work out fairly well for me. At times there was a bit of slowness, but overall it seems to be doing well. As far as the other starters are concerned, I've heard good things about everything, and I kind of wish I started Puncture Gladiator because feels like the Metamorphs are just going to bleed themselves to death. Who knows though? But that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the little wrap up and detail about the Explosive Arrow character starter. One last thing, I do use Barrage for single target, if I forgot to mention that, and so far that seems to be okay. Maybe it's the wrong move in the end, but so far Barrage. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.